Any good meal includes a variety of ingredients. The sweets, the sours, juicy, the whole 9 yards. But sadly, there are people who genuinely believe that if you go to a fancy restaurant, you get the highest quality foods. Let me tell you from experience, that is not always the case. I was invited to eat at this fancy place one morning, and I ordered the breakfast sandwich because it was the cheapest thing they had. All it was well done scrambled eggs on a brioche bun, boring guacamole, and half a tomato baked on the side with pesto on top. Bro, why are you making me work for my food? This tomato should have been sliced and built into the sandwich. Guac was just the smashed up avocados and maybe some salt. I do not remember tasting much from it. But they had these little cute baby Tabasco bottles that they'd give you. I think this was post-COVID, so to avoid the contagions of germs. Anyway, same thing applies with film. Just too much of one thing is no good. These days there seems to be this big concern about not having enough diversity or representation in a film, and I would like to discuss the idiocy of that sentiment. What conflicts me the most is that we have had plenty of projects in recent time with diversity that felt organic. Atlantis is the first thing that pops into my head, but I know if I don't put up more examples, I'll get flamed. To thank for the inspiration of this video, we have this guy who so kindly shared his opinion on the boring, uninspired looking film, Elementals.
Whenever we get a movie about diversity, there's very little diversity on the cast and crew. Remember Zootopia was also about racism, and then the entire cast and crew are white? How this works is, they make a movie about diversity with elements and animals. That way, the message can be about diversity, but they don't actually need to do diversity. Pixar, Disney, you need to be better.
Let's assume for the minute that this guy said anything remotely sounding like a decent point. Just out of curiosity, if a team of scientists developed an end-all be-all cure that eliminated aging, overthinking, and granted unlimited strength and energy, and that was made to work on a diverse group of people, but you discovered that the team that made it was just a bunch of white men, would you then not take it because it wasn't made by a diverse group of individuals? Look, the example's a bit absurd, but my point still stands. These movies have a thing called universal themes. The idea is that it doesn't matter who it's being told by. Everyone can relate to it, or at least have an understanding of it. Well, I'd say everyone, but clearly it's a foreign concept to some people. Let's apply this mentality to other examples. I will not eat at Chipotle because more often than not, the people making these Mexican-style dishes are in fact not Mexican, but instead white high school kids scrapping to afford their next vape pen. Women should not be allowed to use the internet because the person who made it was not female. And if you are Egyptian, throw out all the scissors in your household because you had nothing to do with the making of that tool. Piss off. This particular guy, for all his preaching about equality and diversity, he seems pretty racist in favor towards his Spanish heritage. I don't want to harp on this guy too much because I know he's not exactly the spokesperson for everyone, and I also don't believe bullying children is a good work ethic. But I was scrolling on the talk and I just happened to run on his page again. I thought to myself, hey, it's been a while since I've seen this guy. I wonder if he said anything new. Newsflash, he did!
For those of you who don't know, the movie's about racism. It's Zootopia, but with elements, and they also talk about immigration a little bit. The water elementals are constantly telling the fire elementals to go back to where you came from. And if you're thinking, damn, with everything going on with the Mexican border and immigration, this is a good story to... Nope, there's no Mexicans in this movie. There's no Latinos involved in it. But here's the best part about this. So the fire elementals represent all immigrants. All immigrants, alright? Which means Pixar had a meeting about immigration, and they didn't once think to bring up Latinos. Even though water elementals are clearly the white privileged racist people, the main character's black. Elemental is an interracial love story, the kind Pixar has yet to tell with human characters. Can studios please stop hiring white people to talk about racism? It's getting silly at this point.
Good God, nothing is good enough for this guy. Fire people are voiced by all different kinds of people, but Latinos, why are we using animated characters to talk to children about heavy themes? You know what would have made Osmosis Jones a better movie? If they shoved a real camera inside a real person's body and have Chris Rock play an actual white blood cell. Oh, I'm sorry, a cell of color, because at least he's also complaining about a black guy voicing a rich entitled water folk, the stand-in for white people, as he said, because we all know blacks are incapable of such financial status. Shut the For the most part, I always found it ridiculous to think that people had to have characters with tangible similarities with the viewer in order to really relate, and frankly, I still hold that opinion. I can understand why maybe a kid would feel that way, so it would stand the reason that maybe some adults are stuck thinking that way. If you look at commercials made in the 80s, you wouldn't see as much people that were black, Asian, or brown. I don't want to say you'd never see different ethnic groups, but sure, you could argue that it was mostly white. Fair enough, right? But the knee-jerk reaction seems to be that America is racist and would only hire white. So nowadays, it's the complete opposite. It's much more scarce to find the white people in commercials. Just look at all of Apple's recent ads. All I see are different shades of representation. Now, being in a commercial isn't this high-demanding job where only the best of the best can play the role of satisfied customer. It just rubs me the wrong way to think that the criteria of hiring some of these folks for some of these bits now involves the actor to not be white or male. People will go to such lengths so as to add representation by race swapping, because why make original characters when you can hop off the backs of established ones and monetize it? But if you absolutely need to see people of different backgrounds, I believe representation should and can be used appropriately and not just cuz. I don't know, maybe I'm just a nationalist, but it really does feel like these directors have this dartboard of ethnicities with a women of color being a requirement to be in some of these movies. Say you're making a film that takes place in Mexico, smack dab in the middle of St. Louis, about the struggles of two opposing cartel gangs surrounded by a mariachi band. Very brown people activity. If I were a woke folk and diversity and representation was my main goal, this would pose a problem because 99% of the population of Mexico look a particular way. And the world is full of all shapes of colors, right? So for the movie, I decided to hire a variety of skin colors. Would this not look weird to you? Out of place even? It's a bit old news, but apparently she's supposed to be a dwarf queen. This is the last thing I would picture being a dwarf queen. No dwarf queen would wear that much yellow. Trying my very best not to sound like a racist to just refer to people by their skin colors, but you lot are the ones making a fuss about there being a black lesbian in a kid's movie. The location in which the story takes place does matter. I recall a YouTube guy who watched the Lightyear movie saying that the story not being region-based allows for more diversity, and he's not wrong. When you create a world from scratch, you can make it look like anything. But if your reasoning is nothing more than representation for representational sake, then it's just shallow. It would be like playing God of War midway through the game, and you thought to yourself, you know, why aren't there any Mexicans in the game? Why can't you just plop a Mexican street corner here? We need more Latino representation. Breaking Bad is a show that needs no introduction, but I wanted to talk about how I really liked how Vince portrayed the culture of Zabines in the spin-off series Better Call Saul. To preface, I think everyone in the cast felt like a believable person in both series. I love everyone in the cast. Yes, even you, Skyler. Even though I am of the belief that the actress has a bit of a scary face, and I could do without the happy birthday song in my head. Vince and the team were very good at casting these characters to play one specific role that made them so iconic. That's why when you see Aaron Paul, literally in anything else, everyone would just want him to say the funny line. Bitch! 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 Yeah, bitch! Bitch. Bitch. Small tangent, but I feel bad for these actors who play a popular character and now are only seen as that guy. I'm very sure it can feel frustrating. Anyways, I'm using Better Call Saul because when these two knuckleheads try to pull a fast one on Tuco's grandma, I couldn't help but be extremely impressed of how accurate the environment of the household was. Down to how concerned the grandma was and her mannerisms regarding the carpet.
Ay, mijo, mira, todavía veo la salsa que derramaste. No debes permitir que se seque. No, porque no quiero que se vaya a secar, porque una vez se seca, pues ya no sale.
Dude, she even talks like my grandma. It's uncanny. Like, see, abuelita, I know if I don't do the thing will be ruined. It's difficult to describe, but the only way I could articulate it is that if the characters were wearing mariachi outfits, holding maracas, and talking about tacos, and the show tried to pass it off as authentic, it would be very clear that they didn't even try. That's the word I was looking for, authenticity. It also helps to know how the people behind the project swing ideologically. An ideology. Obviously, if you tell me Disney's making a new Peter Pan movie where Tinkerbell is black, making Lost Boys not all boys, and Wendy can fight literally people twice her size, safe to say why everyone knows why that's the case. Oh, strong, independent woman. Good f***ing Lord, I'm so tired of seeing that being pushed. What makes this whole thing pretty funny, though, is that they recently announced the actors for the live-action Lilo and Stitch movie coming up, but the Twitter folk were really upset that the actors weren't really brown enough. Interesting that it only goes one way. It's easy to take an existing property and switch things up to please such a loud, but from what I've been told, minority group of people instead of taking the time to think and create brand new ideas to which people will be more accepting of whatever bull you want to shove down their throats. I don't know if we'll ever see the end of this nonsense anytime soon, though at the very least there does seem some blowback from the general audiences. Speaking for myself, I want to stop seeing a project and judging it with extreme prejudice and enjoy it for what it may be. But you see so many of these attempts at elevating minorities, I roll my eyes at the sight of it. The pandering, I mean, not the minorities themselves, okay? Just to be clear. I still haven't seen Everywhere All at Once because the only thing I hear about it is that it's got great Asian representation, which I hate because I sat through Beef and I actually found myself enjoying that, despite the nitpicks I could say about it. The sentiment of diverse inclusion is so widely accepted and good on the surface, but I hope sooner than later people will wake up and demand better treatment than this. So until then, I will continue to cry and complain about it. Or when they hire me for the live-action Treasure Planet. Alongside a Land which they already butchered is one of my favorite animated movies, and I want to be casted as Mort. Don't CG me into that pink blob. There isn't enough Latino representation as it is, and make it take place in Chicago, where there are absolutely no crimes, no murders, or no looting, because we don't wish to misrepresent that area.